consciousness, but you never know whether he's talking just of the self or of a society and social consciousness, or of history and the unfolding of history. You see? Simply because what goes on in one is sort of like what goes on in the other, and what goes on in the whole, the individual, the society, the universe as a whole. So that as you read that thing about the master-servant relationship, which I think is the first selection, you'll say, yes, this is about how the individual achieves some sort of self-awareness of position in relationship to, you see. But you could read the same sort of thing about how a nation achieves its own identity in relationship to. And this whole process is the process of the absolute in the dialectical unfolding of things. So keep in mind that analogy to the early Greeks, particularly the microcosm, macrocosm kind of aspect. And the way in which these processes are ordered at the micro and the macro level are always rationally ordered. You see, rationally ordered. Because the real is rational. And all processes of history are rational in his sense of rational. You see. What is his sense of rational? Well, that moves us, of course, from his new metaphysic to a new methodology. To a new methodology. What we've had in the preceding century or two is the attempt at a demonstrative metaphysic. Demonstrative knowledge, deductive reasoning, syllogistic, mathematical reasoning, starting either with self-evident truths or empirical generalizations. And of course, it's that kind of demonstrative metaphysic that both Hume and Kant were so critical of. And in effect, Hegel agrees with their criticism. He's not trying to do that kind of demonstrative metaphysic. He's not trying to prove things. His conception of reason, in other words, is not the conception of deductive proofs. His conception of reason is what you might call thinking, trying to understand, trying to get clear about something. For that 18th century business, reason involved ideas which form propositions, judgments, which are developed further in syllogisms. So that in effect, the unit of thought in the tradition from Descartes on is really the proposition, the judgments we make. And it was because Kant was likewise committed to that, that Kant tried to find the categories that underlie the judgments. Now, the key difference for Hegel is that Hegel makes the focus of thought, reason, not the proposition, but the concept, the begriff, the concept. That's quite a difference. You see, if you're thinking in terms of propositions, you try to see what a proposition logically implies, and you try to state it in another proposition. But if you're thinking in terms of concepts, you're trying to clarify a concept. You're trying to explore conceptual relationships. One concept gives rise to another concept as your mind meanders along. And I use that term meandering intentionally. Doesn't always go in a straight line. Meandering doesn't. It's almost a trial and error, working through various concepts. So that as you try to get an understanding of a particular concept, the concept of being, or the concept of justice, whatever it is, you start with something of an initial idea that first comes to mind. You start, that is to say, with a direct awareness. You're directly aware of some concept. You see. And that initial concept you begin with is mediated by a process of reflection in which you say to it, well, yes, no, you know, and you're not satisfied with it. You see another side of the picture. So there is a process not only of direct awareness, but of mediation through that reflective meandering, you see, to a clearer, fuller outcome, a clearer conceptualization. It seems to me this is much more descriptive of the way most people think. Isn't that the way it is for you? It is for me? You know, there's a sense in which the kind of reflection which goes on throughout a college career could be seen something like that. You start with some sort of an idea of an education, and then you're confronted with an idea of liberal arts education that you never really assimilated before, and you move from a pragmatic to a purist liberal arts one. You know? And then the two seem to come together in your mind by the time you graduate, and you begin to see all of the possible transfers of learning that are possible from a philosophy major to every occupation you can imagine. Which is true. Which is true. You see. Now that's how we think. Sorting through our ideas. Or if you prefer to say, playing with your marbles. But trying to get clear about things. So he's much more concerned with this conceptualization. Now, it's that creative thinking process, which is the life of the mind. You see, the life of spirit. And your outward life becomes a manifestation of the inner conceptualization. So that human life is the life of mind, the life of spirit. And in the German sense, that's culture. Yes. The spiritual life is culture. And what's embraced in culture in the final analysis is art, religion, philosophy. Where art gives some sort of sensory image as a way of playing with the concepts. And religion uses symbols in playing with the concepts. It's philosophy that gets straight at the heart of the thing, conceptualizing it. So the whole process is going down there to that end. Now, in talking of this new method, notice two things. I called the new method last time phenomenology. Yeah. A phenomenology of mind, of spirit. Phenomenology is descriptive of a description of the logos structure. You see? Logy is a study of what? A study of the logos structure. The logos structure of what? The phenomenon of thinking. The phenomena of the life of spirit, the life of the mind. You see, it's a descriptive process. So you get the new method there, but you also get the new logic, the dialectic. You see? The thesis, antithesis, synthesis. And it's at that point that we can turn to this outline that I gave you just now. Now, you notice that, that on this outline, you have all sorts of triads, 3 points, and 3 points within each of the 3 points, and 3 points within each of the 3 points that are within the other 3 points that are within the first 3 points. Wheels within wheels are turning. The overall 3 points you see are first, logic. Second, nature. Third, spirit. You see. It's not until you get to spirit that you get the conscious outworking of the concept. What you have in logic, of course, what you have in logic is nothing but the logical structure, if you like, the form, or forms that conceptualization follows. And for that matter, that history follows. Whereas in nature, what you have is the world of natural sciences. Here you have the objective material in which spirit is manifested at a pre-conscious level. Remember, I called this a gradualism in which there are varying degrees of the manifestation of spirit. Well, look at the logic, and we'll look at the others later on. You notice that everything numbered 1 is a thesis. Everything numbered 2 is an antithesis. Everything numbered 3 is a synthesis. Okay. The thesis is what is immediately apprehended, comes to the mind immediately. The antithesis is the mediating stage. The synthesis is where it comes together with comprehension. Thesis, antithesis, synthesis. The initial concept is always very abstract. And as comprehension grows, it becomes more and more concrete. So it's a movement from the abstract to the concrete. And the most concrete expression of thought is in culture. Well, let me try an overhead and see if that will help us get on with what he's doing. And this will be a little bit of an exercise in reading Hegel. Is that too small? It is, isn't it? Move it back a bit.